I never expected my own father to drag me into court. Growing up, all I ever wanted was his approval. Our family business, Carson Auto Parts, had been part of our community for 30 years. Dad started it before I was born, and I practically grew up on that shop floor. "One day, this will all be yours, James," he used to tell me when I was a kid, ruffling my hair as I handed him tools. I believed him. I worked weekends and summers there throughout high school. I skipped college to join full-time at 18, learning every aspect of the business. What Dad didn't tell me was that he'd been mismanaging everything for years. The day I turned 25, he called me into his office. "Son, I'm in trouble," he admitted, shoulders slumped. "The business is underwater. I've got suppliers threatening to cut us off, 3 months of back rent, and the IRS breathing down my neck." I was shocked. "How bad is it?" "About $280,000 in debt," he said, not meeting my eyes. "I've been robbing Peter to pay Paul for years." My stomach dropped. "What happens now?" "I'm done," he said, standing up. "I'm filing bankruptcy and moving to Florida with Linda. Her parents left her that condo, and I need a fresh start." Linda was his third wife, 15 years younger than him. They'd been married just 2 years. "What about the business? What about me?" I asked. He shrugged. "You can stay until they lock the doors, I guess. I'm sorry, son." I couldn't believe it. The business that was going to be mine someday was about to disappear, and Dad was just walking away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Carson Auto Parts employed 15 people, some who'd worked there since I was a kid. They had families, mortgages, and our customers. Some had been coming to us for decades. It wasn't just about me, so I made a decision. I called my girlfriend Sarah, who worked at a local bank. "I need help," I told her. "I want to save the business." For the next 3 days, we worked non-stop. Sarah helped me understand what it would take financially. I contacted a lawyer. Most importantly, I went to talk to my Uncle Mike, Dad's brother, who had a successful construction company. "Your dad's running away from his problems again," Uncle Mike said, shaking his head. "He did the same thing with his first business, and your mom." "I need a loan," I said. "I want to buy the business assets before bankruptcy, pay off the critical debts, and negotiate with the rest." Uncle Mike studied me for a long moment. "You sure about this, James? You're 25. This is a lot to take on." "I've never been more sure of anything," he nodded. "All right, I'll help you." And with Uncle Mike's loan and guidance, I made an offer to Dad. $50,000 for the business assets, plus I'd take on the most pressing $100,000 in debt. Dad jumped at it. I think he was just relieved someone would deal with the mess. We signed the papers a week later. Dad didn't even read them carefully. He just wanted out. I renamed the business Carson Auto Solutions and got to work. I called every creditor, negotiated payment plans, worked 16-hour days, slept on a cot in the back office. I modernized our inventory system, expanded our services, and personally called every customer who'd left us. The first year was brutal. There were days I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. But slowly, things turned around. By year 3, we'd paid off all the old debts. By year 5, we'd tripled our revenue and opened a second location. And Dad, he burned through whatever money he had in Florida. Linda left him after he gambled away her inheritance. Then suddenly he was back in town, staying with my sister. "Dad's asking about the business," she warned me one Sunday dinner. "He seems to think he still has some claim to it." I laughed it off. The business he abandoned and sold to me? The one I've rebuilt from nothing? That business? But a week later, I was hosting our annual company barbecue. We were celebrating our 10th anniversary under my ownership. All 15 original employees were still with us, plus 30 new ones. Their families were there. We'd closed both locations for the day so everyone could attend. That's when Dad showed up uninvited. He'd clearly been drinking. "Look at all this," he slurred, gesturing around my backyard. "This should be my retirement. I built this business." I tried to lead him away from the crowd. "Dad, let's talk about this later." "No!" he shouted, pulling away. You stole my retirement. I gave you everything and you took advantage of me when I was down. Everyone went quiet. My 10-year-old son was watching. My employees were watching. You sold me a failing business that you ran into the ground, I said quietly. I saved it. I built it into what it is today. You didn't want it anymore, remember? I wasn't thinking straight, he yelled. You should have protected me. I'm your father. My wife came over and tried to calm the situation, but Dad just got louder. You owe me. This is my business. I'm going to get what's mine. I had security escort him out. The party continued, but the damage was done. I was humiliated, angry, and sad all at once. 2 weeks later, I was served with lawsuit papers. Dad was suing me, claiming I had committed fraud by purchasing the business at an unfair price and that he deserved fair compensation for the current value of the company. I couldn't believe Dad was actually going through with the lawsuit. The papers claimed I had taken advantage of his temporary financial distress and deliberately undervalued the business when I purchased it. He was asking for 50% of the current business value, which would have been over $2 million. My lawyer, Diane, was blunt when I showed her the papers. This is ridiculous. The case has no merit. You have signed contracts and the business was effectively worthless when you bought it. It had more debts than assets. Then why is he doing this? I asked. Because he sees your success and wants a piece of it, she said. He probably found some ambulance chaser who took the case on contingency, hoping you'd settle to avoid family drama. I wouldn't settle. Not after everything I'd sacrificed to build this business. The next few months were tense. Dad started telling family members his version of events, that I had tricked him, that I owed him. Some believed him. My sister stopped talking to me. Even my mom, who had divorced Dad 20 years ago, called to ask if there was any truth to his claims. You know, Dad, I told her, when has he ever taken responsibility for anything? The court date approached. I was nervous but confident in the facts. The week before the hearing, Dad's lawyer reached out about a settlement. He'll drop the case for $500,000, the lawyer proposed. I laughed. Not a chance. We'll see you in court. The day of the hearing arrived. We gathered in a small courtroom, me with Diane, Dad with his lawyer. Dad wouldn't look me in the eye. Judge Harriman was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s. She reviewed the case documents briefly, then looked up at Dad's lawyer. Counselor, please explain to me why this case shouldn't be dismissed immediately, she said. I'm looking at a clearly executed bill of sale, signed by your client, selling a business that was on the verge of bankruptcy for what appears to be a fair price, given its financial state at the time. Dad's lawyer fumbled through some argument about family obligations and moral responsibilities. The judge cut him off. This court deals in legal obligations, not moral ones, she said sharply. Did your client sign these documents of his own free will? Yes, but was there any coercion or deception involved? Well, we believe that. Do you have any evidence of fraud or misrepresentation? Any at all? The lawyer looked at his notes. Your Honor, the business is now worth millions, and my client received only $50,000. Judge Harriman sighed. That's called business risk, Counselor. The defendant took on a failing business and significant debt, and through his own efforts made it successful. Your client chose to walk away. He doesn't get to come back 10 years later and claim entitlement to the results of someone else's work. She turned to me. Mr. Carson, did you fulfill all obligations outlined in the purchase agreement? Yes, Your Honor, I replied. I paid the agreed amount and took on the specified debts, which were paid in full within 3 years. She nodded and turned back to Dad's lawyer. This case is dismissed with prejudice, and Counselor, I strongly suggest you advise your client against filing any further frivolous lawsuits on this matter. It had taken the judge less than 5 minutes to throw out Dad's case. As we left the courtroom, Dad finally looked at me. There was anger in his eyes, but something else too. Defeat, maybe, or shame. He started to say something, but his lawyer pulled him away. Outside the courthouse, Diane congratulated me. That went exactly as expected. He doesn't have a leg to stand on. I should have felt victorious, but I just felt hollow. My own father had tried to take away everything I'd built. That evening, I sat in my office at home, staring at old family photos. In one, Dad was teaching me to change oil when I was 12. We were both smiling. What had happened to that man? My phone rang. It was Uncle Mike. "I heard what happened in court," he said. "Your dad called me, ranting." "Yeah, well, he lost," I said flatly. "He's always been his own worst enemy," Uncle Mike said. "Listen, I'm proud of you, James. Not just for winning today, but for everything you've built. Your dad should be proud too, even if he's too stubborn to admit it." A week after the court case, life was returning to normal. I threw myself back into work, trying to forget the pain of my father's betrayal. The lawsuit had been a distraction, but I had a business to run and employees who depended on me. That Friday, I stayed late at the shop. Everyone had gone home, and I was reviewing expansion plans for a third location. The front door chimed, and I looked up, surprised since we were closed. It was my sister, Rachel. "We need to talk," she said, standing awkwardly by the counter. We hadn't spoken since Dad filed the lawsuit. "I'm listening," I said, crossing my arms. She sighed. "I owe you an apology. I should have never taken Dad's side without hearing yours. And now? Now I've seen the court documents. Mike showed me everything. The state of the business when Dad left, how much debt you took on, all of it." She looked around the shop. "And I can see what you've built. This isn't Dad's business anymore. This is all you." I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. "Thank you for saying that." "There's more," she said, her expression turning concerned. "Dad's not doing well, James. After the court loss, he went on a 3-day bender. He's staying with me again, and he's—" She trailed off. "He's what?" "He's talking about bankruptcy again. He's got credit card debt, gambling debts, and his health isn't good. The doctor thinks he might need heart surgery." I leaned back in my chair, processing this. "Rachel, I'm sorry about his health, but I can't help him financially. Not after what he tried to do." "I'm not asking you to give him money," she said quickly, "but he needs something to do, some purpose. He's drinking himself to death." "What are you suggesting?" She hesitated. "Maybe you could find something for him at the shop. Just part-time." I laughed bitterly. "You want me to hire the man who just tried to sue me for millions? The man who told everyone I stole from him?" "I know it's asking a lot," she admitted, "but he's still our dad." I shook my head. "I need to think about this." After Rachel left, I locked up and drove home, my mind racing. The idea of working with Dad again seemed impossible, but his situation nagged at me. The next morning, I discussed it with my wife over breakfast. "You don't owe him anything," Sarah said firmly. "He abandoned the business, then tried to take it from you when you made it successful." "I know," I agreed. "But if I don't help him, who will? Rachel can't support him forever." Sarah took my hand. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Just don't let him hurt you again." That afternoon, I drove to Rachel's house. Dad was sitting on the porch, looking older and frailer than I remembered. He stiffened when he saw me. "What do you want?" he asked as I approached. "To talk," I said, sitting down beside him. "Rachel tells me you're having a rough time." He looked away. "Come to gloat?" "No, I came to offer you a job." His head snapped toward me. "What?" "It's nothing fancy. We need someone to manage the parts warehouse at the new location. 4 days a week, decent pay, benefits that would cover your medical needs." He narrowed his eyes. "Why would you do this after everything?" "Because despite it all, you taught me the business. And because I don't want to see you destroy yourself." I stood up. "But there are conditions. You report to my warehouse manager, not to me. You don't tell anyone you're my father on the job, and you get help for your drinking." "You're offering me charity," he said bitterly. "I'm offering you a chance," I corrected him. "Take it or leave it." He was quiet for a long moment. "When do I start?" "Monday, 8 a.m. Don't be late." As I walked back to my car, Dad called out, "James!" I turned. "Thank you," he said gruffly. I nodded and left, unsure if I'd made the right decision. Dad showed up Monday morning, 10 minutes early. I introduced him to Marcus, the warehouse manager, as Frank, an old friend of the family with parts experience. Marcus gave him a tour while I watched from my office. The first few weeks were awkward. Dad kept his head down, did his job, and went home. We barely spoke. The employees who knew him from the old days were confused by our formal relationship, but no one asked questions. Then one afternoon, about a month into his employment, I overheard him talking to a young mechanic who was struggling with an inventory problem. "Let me show you a trick," Dad said, pulling out a notepad. "I've been doing this for 40 years. There's a system to it." I watched as he patiently explained his method. The mechanic was nodding, clearly grateful for the help. Later that week, Marcus reported that Dad had reorganized the warehouse shelving system, making everything more efficient. "Frank's been a great addition," he said. "He really knows his stuff." Gradually, Dad became more comfortable. He started joining the staff for lunch occasionally. He looked healthier. According to Rachel, he'd stopped drinking and was attending support group meetings. 3 months after he started, I was working late again when Dad knocked on my office door. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Sure," I said, gesturing to a chair. He sat down, looking nervous. "I've been wanting to say something for a while now." He took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, James, for everything. For abandoning the business, for the lawsuit, for showing up drunk at your party. I was wrong. I hadn't expected this. Thank you for saying that. The truth is I was jealous," he continued, "seeing what you've made of this place, knowing I could never have done it myself. It was easier to blame you than admit my own failures. Dad, let me finish. You were right in court. You earned every bit of this success. You didn't steal anything from me." His voice broke slightly. "If anything, I tried to steal from you." There was a long silence after Dad's apology. I'd waited years to hear those words, but now that he'd said them, I didn't know how to respond. "I appreciate that," I finally said. "It means a lot." Dad nodded, looking down at his hands. "There's something else. The doctor says I need that heart surgery soon. They've scheduled it for next month. Are the company benefits covering it?" "Most of it," he said. "But that's not why I'm telling you. I want you to know that if something happens to me during surgery, I've signed papers making it clear I have no claim to this business. Rachel has them." I felt a twinge of guilt. Even now, part of me had been worried he might try another legal angle. "Let's not think that way," I said. "You're going to be fine." He gave a small smile. "You sound like your mother, always the optimist." That weekend, I invited Dad to dinner at our house, the first time since the blow-up at the company barbecue. My son, Tyler, was wary at first, remembering his grandfather's drunken outburst, but Dad made a special effort with him. "Want to see something cool?" he asked Tyler after dinner. He pulled out his wallet and removed a worn photo. "This is your dad when he was about your age, working on his first engine rebuild." Tyler studied the picture. "Dad looks so young." "He was a natural," Dad said, glancing at me. "Much better than I ever was." Over the next few weeks, something shifted between us. We weren't close exactly, but the tension had eased. At work, Dad continued to excel. He never overstepped or tried to assert authority, but his experience proved valuable. Employees started coming to him for advice, and he seemed to thrive on being needed. The day before his surgery, I visited him at Rachel's house. He was sitting at the kitchen table, filling out paperwork. "Nervous?" I asked. "A little," he admitted. "Doctor says it's routine, but still..." I sat across from him. "Is there anything you need?" He hesitated. "Actually, yes. If it's not too much trouble, I'd like you to be there. At the hospital." I was surprised by the request. "Of course I'll be there." The surgery was scheduled for 7 a.m. Sarah and I arrived at the hospital at 6, meeting Rachel in the waiting room. The doctors took Dad in, explaining the procedure would take about 4 hours. As we waited, Rachel and I reminisced about childhood memories, some good, some not so good. Dad had always been complicated, capable of great warmth and terrible selfishness, sometimes in the same day. "Remember when he taught us to fish?" Rachel asked. "He was so patient that day." I nodded. "Then he missed your graduation because he was working." "He tried his best," Rachel said softly, in his own way. At hour 3 of the surgery, the doctor came out to the waiting room. My heart dropped. "There were some complications," she said. "His heart was weaker than we expected. We're working to stabilize him now." The next 2 hours were agonizing. Finally, the doctor returned with better news. "He's stable. The surgery was successful, but recovery will be longer than anticipated. He's asking for you," she said, looking at me. Dad looked small in the hospital bed, connected to monitors and IV lines. "Hey," I said, approaching cautiously. His eyes fluttered open. "You came." "Of course I did. You scared us for a bit there." He tried to smile. "Too stubborn to check out just yet." I took his hand. "Get some rest. I'll be back tomorrow." Recovery was slow. Dad spent 2 weeks in the hospital, then moved back to Rachel's for recuperation. He couldn't work for at least 6 weeks, but I assured him his job would be waiting. During his absence, I realized how much the warehouse had come to depend on him. Marcus struggled to maintain the systems Dad had implemented. When Dad finally returned to work on a part-time basis, the staff welcomed him with a small celebration. I watched from a distance as he modestly accepted their good wishes, looking genuinely touched. That evening, I asked him to stay after closing. I had a proposal. "I've been thinking," I said as we sat in my office. "The warehouse has really grown. We need someone to oversee all parts operations across all 3 locations." He looked confused. "You're creating a new position?" "Yes, Parts Operations Director. It would mean a raise, more responsibility. The catch is you'd have to tell everyone you're my father. No more hiding it." Dad was quiet for a moment. "Why now?" "Because you've earned it," I said simply. "Not because you're my father, but because you're good at what you do. The business needs you." He studied me. "And what about us? Can we move past everything?" I considered the question carefully. "I think we already have in some ways. The rest will take time." Dad nodded, his eyes glistening slightly. "I'd like that chance." We shook hands, and as I walked him out to his car, he paused. "You know, when I said this business would be yours someday, I never imagined what you'd make of it," he said, looking at the building with its new sign and expanded facilities. "It's far better than anything I could have built." "I had a good foundation to start with," I replied. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I'm proud of you, son. I should have said that a long time ago." As I watched him drive away, I felt a weight lift that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. The business that had come between us was now bringing us back together on new terms, as equals, with mutual respect. The next day, I called a staff meeting to introduce our new Parts Operations Director and to share, for the first time, the full story of Carson Auto Solutions, how it began, how it almost ended, and how it was saved. It was a story of failure and redemption, of broken trust and second chances. And as I spoke, with my father standing beside me, I realized it was also the story of our family, flawed and complicated, but still standing. This business has always been about more than just auto parts, I concluded. It's about people. It's about building something that lasts, something we can all be proud of. I glanced at my father, who nodded slightly, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Together," I added, "we're just getting started."